Welcome to the final week of PHI 2003, African Spirituality. Throughout this course, we have explored African spirituality as a living tradition that shapes identity, community, morality, healing, leadership, and humanity's relationship with the natural world. Today, we examine one of the most important questions facing Africa in the 21st century. Can African spirituality continue to thrive in the modern world? African spirituality has survived centuries of dramatic change, colonialism, missionary expansion, globalization, urbanization, migration, and technological transformation. Rather than disappearing, it has adapted, evolved, and found new expressions across Africa and throughout the world. In this lesson, we explore how African spirituality interacts with Christianity, Islam, modern society, and the African diaspora, while considering its future contribution to African development. To understand African spirituality today, we must first understand one of the most transformative periods in African history, colonialism. Beginning in the late 19th century, European colonial powers expanded political control over much of Africa. Alongside colonial governments came Christian missionary societies that established churches, schools, hospitals, and printing presses. Missionaries introduced literacy, formal education, modern medicine, and biblical teachings that transformed many African communities. At the same time, many missionaries viewed African traditional religions as pagan or incompatible with Christianity. Sacred forests were sometimes destroyed. Traditional shrines were abandoned. Ceremonies were discouraged. Traditional healers, diviners, and spiritual leaders often lost social status. Many African names, songs, rituals, and cultural practices were replaced by European customs. Yet African communities did not simply abandon their spiritual heritage. Instead, many adapted. Christianity in Africa gradually absorbed African music, language, storytelling, dance, symbols, and communal values. Today, many churches worship using African drums, indigenous languages, traditional melodies, and community celebrations that reflect African cultural identity. Rather than disappearing, African spirituality continued to influence religious life in new and creative ways. History therefore tells a story not only of conflict, but also of resilience and adaptation. African communities responded to colonialism in different ways. Some embraced Christianity or Islam, while maintaining aspects of traditional culture. Others resisted cultural change and preserved indigenous religious practices. Many blended traditions, creating uniquely African expressions of faith. This process is sometimes called religious syncretism, the blending of beliefs and practices from different religious traditions. For example, an individual may attend church on Sunday, while also participating in family ancestral remembrance ceremonies, or consulting respected elders during important life events. Such practices illustrate that religion is not always experienced as competing systems. Instead, many Africans understand spirituality as a holistic way of life that integrates faith, family, community, culture, and identity. These responses demonstrate the remarkable adaptability of African spirituality in changing historical circumstances. So far, we explored how colonialism and missionary encounters transformed Africa's religious landscape. We also saw that African spirituality demonstrated remarkable resilience by adapting to changing historical realities. Next, we examine how African spirituality continues to interact with Christianity and Islam, and how new movements are helping preserve indigenous spiritual traditions for future generations. Today, Africa is home to one of the world's largest Christian populations. Yet Christianity in Africa has developed in ways that reflect African cultures, languages, music, and communal values. Across the continent, worship often includes vibrant singing, rhythmic drumming, dancing, storytelling, and indigenous languages. Churches celebrate weddings, funerals, harvest festivals, and community gatherings in ways that resonate with local traditions. Many African Christians also continue to value traditional principles such as respect for elders, communal responsibility, reconciliation, hospitality, and care for creation. These ethical values often complement Christian teachings about love, justice, and compassion. At the same time, some traditional beliefs and practices remain areas of theological debate. Questions surrounding ancestral veneration, divination, and certain ritual practices continue to be interpreted differently among Christian communities. These discussions reflect the diversity of African Christianity rather than a single uniform experience. Ultimately, many African Christians seek to express their faith authentically while remaining connected to their cultural heritage. Islam has been part of Africa for more than 13 centuries and has profoundly influenced the continent's spiritual, educational, and cultural development. Across North, West, East, and parts of Central Africa, Muslim communities have developed rich traditions that reflect both Islamic teachings and African cultural identities. Mosques, Quranic schools, scholarship, trade networks, and charitable institutions have played important roles in African history. Like Christianity, Islam in Africa often interacts with local customs concerning family life, community leadership, hospitality, and rites of passage. In some communities, cultural traditions continue alongside Islamic religious practice, while in others, religious leaders encourage practices that closely follow Islamic teachings. Across the continent, African Muslims contribute significantly to education, peacebuilding, social welfare, and community development. The relationship between African spirituality and Islam, therefore, varies across regions, reflecting Africa's remarkable cultural diversity. During the 20th and 21st centuries, many Africans began rediscovering their indigenous spiritual heritage. This renewed interest has inspired what scholars often describe as neo-traditional movements. These movements seek to preserve African languages, oral traditions, sacred sites, traditional ceremonies, indigenous philosophies, and ecological knowledge, while engaging positively with contemporary society. Universities now offer courses on African philosophy, indigenous knowledge systems, and traditional religions. Museums and cultural centers preserve historical artifacts, oral histories, music, dance, and ceremonial practices. Across Africa, cultural festivals celebrate ancestral heritage through storytelling, traditional dress, music, art, and community participation. Digital media, documentaries, podcasts, and online platforms are making African spiritual traditions more accessible to younger generations. These initiatives are not about returning to the past unchanged. Rather, they represent efforts to preserve valuable cultural knowledge while responding thoughtfully to the realities of the modern world. Neo-traditional movements remind us that cultural identity can remain dynamic, creative, and relevant across generations. We have seen that African spirituality continues to engage with both Christianity and Islam, while inspiring renewed appreciation for indigenous knowledge and cultural identity. Rather than remaining fixed in the past, African spirituality continues to evolve, enriching modern societies through dialogue, creativity, scholarship, and community life. We will now travel beyond the African continent to explore African spirituality in the diaspora, consider its future, and reflect on one final question: can African spirituality help shape Africa's future? Welcome to the final part of our journey through African spirituality. Throughout this course, we have explored African spirituality as a living tradition rooted in community, respect, harmony, morality, healing, and our relationship with the Creator and the natural world. In this final section, we explore how African spirituality has spread across the globe, consider its future, and reflect on one important question: Can African spirituality help shape Africa's future? African spirituality did not remain confined to the African continent. Through migration, trade, and, tragically, the transatlantic slave trade, millions of Africans carried their cultural traditions, beliefs, music, and spiritual practices to other parts of the world. Despite immense hardship, many communities preserved elements of African spirituality by adapting them to new environments. Across the Caribbean and the Americas, African cultural traditions continue to influence music, storytelling, family life, festivals, artistic expression, and religious practice. African values such as communal responsibility, reverence for elders, respect for ancestors, hospitality, rhythm, dance, and oral tradition remain visible in many diaspora communities. Today, African spirituality also inspires scholars, environmental activists, artists, educators, and young people seeking deeper cultural identity and historical understanding. Digital technology now enables Africans across the world to reconnect with their languages, histories, philosophies, and spiritual traditions. African spirituality has therefore become a global cultural heritage that continues to evolve while maintaining its roots. What does the future hold for African spirituality? The answer depends largely on future generations. Africa is one of the youngest continents in the world. Millions of young Africans are embracing technology, innovation, higher education, entrepreneurship, and global citizenship. At the same time, there is growing interest in preserving indigenous languages, traditional knowledge, environmental stewardship, cultural heritage, and African philosophies. Universities are expanding research into indigenous knowledge systems. Museums are preserving oral histories and historical artifacts. Communities are protecting sacred forests, rivers, and cultural sites. Digital platforms now allow elders to share stories with young audiences across continents. The future of African spirituality is therefore not about choosing between tradition and modernity. Rather, it is about building bridges between ancient wisdom and contemporary knowledge. African spirituality reminds us that sustainable development includes respect for people, culture, nature, and future generations. As Africa continues to grow economically, socially, and technologically, these values may become even more important. As we conclude this course, let us reflect on what we have learned. African spirituality is far more than a collection of ancient customs. It is a living philosophy that teaches respect for human dignity, community, hospitality, moral responsibility, environmental stewardship, reconciliation, healing, and hope. Throughout this course, we have explored the wisdom of ancestors, sacred places, rituals, ethics, healing traditions, and the enduring importance of community. We have also seen how African spirituality continues to adapt to changing historical, cultural, and technological realities. Whether one approaches African spirituality as a believer, a scholar, or simply as a learner, it offers valuable insights into how human beings can live together with mutual respect and shared responsibility. Perhaps its greatest lesson is this: human flourishing depends upon harmony with ourselves, with one another, with nature, and with the Creator. As philosopher John M. Beatty famously observed, "I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am." May this principle continue to inspire us as global citizens committed to justice, compassion, and peaceful coexistence. Thank you for joining this journey through African spirituality. If you enjoyed this course, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss future lessons on African philosophy, spirituality, culture, and indigenous knowledge. Share this video with your classmates, colleagues, friends, and anyone interested in understanding Africa's rich intellectual and spiritual heritage. We would also love to hear from you. Can African spirituality help shape Africa's future? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective may inspire meaningful discussion and help others learn from your ideas. Thank you for learning with us. Until next time, continue exploring, continue questioning, and continue celebrating the wisdom that connects humanity across cultures and generations. Kwaheri. Goodbye in Kiswahili.